Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to continue with my farm. I don't know if I can call it a farm, but I am looking for some sheep and cows to keep. So that's what we're going to do today. We're also going to read No Sleep Reddit stories, so let's just jump right into it. This first story is from OK Jeweler. That's a hard thing to say for me. 7907, I'm sorry. And yeah, it was posted 9 days ago. My mother hides inside her closet every night. I grew up without siblings. Back then, it was just me, my mom, and my dad in our home in the rural area around Detroit. My parents always tried their best to give me every opportunity, even though money was tight, and they did a pretty good job. I'm now the owner and founder of a fairly successful construction company, living my best life with my beautiful wife and our 2 daughters in a 2-story home. My father passed away a few years ago, so my mother had been living alone in the house where I grew up. As she got older, she began having more and more difficulty taking care of everything by herself. Since I couldn't always be there to help her, I finally convinced her to sell the house and move into a beautiful, highly rated retirement home in East Detroit. I thought I had made the right decision. Professionals could take care of her and I could focus on my business and my family. But the day she moved in, her health began to decline rapidly. I started receiving calls from the nurses and doctors almost every week. They told me her mental state was worsening, that she refused to eat or take her medication. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach turn, was what they told me about her nights. Every morning, they didn't find her in her bed. They found her sitting inside her closet, awake, shaking, crying. When they asked her why she kept doing that, she always refused to answer. She would just tell them to leave her alone. So I went to visit her. When I asked her directly why she was getting into the closet every night, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said my father wouldn't have wanted me to put her there, that she wanted to go back to her old house. Then she broke down crying and told me to leave. On the drive back, my thoughts were racing. One idea kept forcing its way to the front. What if the staff was mistreating her? It would explain everything, her fear, her silence. So I did everything I thought was justified at the time. I stopped at a Walmart and bought a baby monitor. Later that evening, while my mother was having dinner, I slipped into her apartment and set it up in the corner of her bedroom, aimed directly at her bed. Then I left, went home, had dinner with my family, and tried to get some work done. Around 9 p.m. I checked the monitor. Everything seemed normal. My mother got into bed, turned off the light, and went to sleep. Nothing unusual. I left the feed running in the background. About 2 hours later, something changed. My mother suddenly jolted awake. She didn't move at first. Just lay there, staring at the door, completely still. Then, without warning, she sprang out of bed. Not like someone waking up, like someone was forcing her. She rushed to the closet, climbed inside, and slammed it shut. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. After a few seconds, I grabbed my keys and drove. The streets were empty. I got there fast. When I entered the building, the reception desk was empty. No staff in sight. I ran to her apartment, unlocked the door, and rushed straight into her bedroom. Then I went to the closet. I opened it. There she was, curled up, shaking and crying. I asked her what was going on, what she was doing, why she was acting like this. She slowly raised her hand and pointed behind me to the bed. Only then I saw the pale and hairless humanoid creature sitting on her bed looking at us. I sure hope there's a part 2 to this one, because you naturally have a lot of questions. It's just, this is hell no, like one commented. Hell no. It's like one sentence, everything else was fine, but then that last sentence just gives me the chills. Holy moly. Okay, so on to the next story. This next one is from As Death Beckons. Okay, and it was posted 11 days ago. I asked my wife to send me a sign that she was okay after she died. I wish that I didn't. My wife Amelia and I met in high school. She was the popular, bubbly girl that everybody loved, and I was lucky to have anyone even give me a second glance. I honestly don't know how the hell I pulled it off, but after a chance encounter in the library, we became inseparable. Fast forward 4 years and we were married, ready to take on anything the world could throw at us together. At least that's what the plan was. Amelia was at the ripe old age of 24 when she began to experience severe headaches and frequent nosebleeds. When we got the news, I felt as though we had both been given the 8 months prognosis. Holy no. I'll never forget the tears and sobbing, the cries of anguish that resounded through the doctor's office. That had all been from me. Amelia sat quietly, a faraway look in her green eyes. I took off extended time from work and dedicated my hours to Amelia, whether she was in the hospital or at home with me and her family. As she became more and more withered, I couldn't help but notice the looks her father and sister would give me. It was as though they blamed me somehow for their daughter's condition. The venom in their eyes seemed to hiss, "It should have been you." One night, as Amelia and I lay together in bed, the insignificant voices droning from the TV, she began to ask me about something we had never discussed before in all our years together. "Do you think we go in the afterlife?" The question hit me like a brick wall. I had never been religious, but what was I supposed to say to the love of my life, who was facing her own fading mortality? "Of course, baby," without a doubt in my mind. "Your light is too bright to ever go out. I believe that it'll shine forever." She had looked into my eyes after that, as if examining me for dishonesty. Thankfully, she did not detect it. "Good. I'll be waiting for you. I'm sure it'll feel like just a few seconds or so. Time and suffering won't exist anymore." I should have let the conversation end, but playing up my lie even more, I said, "I want you to send me a sign, Amelia. Send me a signal of some sort that you're thriving. Whether it's that old Madonna song you like, or a canary out on the porch, singing its heart out. Anything. Anything so that I can think of you." Amelia had wound herself even tighter into me at that point, a sad smile on her face. "I will." The doctors hadn't been quite right with their grim prediction. Amelia persisted for almost 10 months before that light of hers finally faded. I'm ashamed to say that though I tried my damnedest to speak at her funeral, I broke down and couldn't do it. I was forced to sit and watch with red eyes as her family and friends told wonderful stories about the love of my life, my best friend, and I, her husband, had nothing to offer the congregation. Time seemed to slow down after she left me. My performance at work dipped. I began avoiding my own friends even more, and I picked up the bottle. There seemed to be a hole, deep and hollow, a black chasm that had formed deep within me, and it would never ever be filled again. The first sign came 2 months after she had passed. I was sitting on my porch, drifting into sleep, the glass of whiskey in my hand slowly sliding out. There was a quick movement, and I jerked back to full consciousness. A white cat had darted out of nowhere and was now sitting at the bottom step of my porch. I had a mind to shoo it away, but somehow my booze-saddled brain was still able to recall the conversation that Amelia and I had all those eons ago. I sat forward, hardly believing it. The cat merely looked up at me with green eyes, and I could swear that it looked as though she was smiling. I began to smile myself. tears forming in my eyes. Then there was more movement. 2 coyotes sprung forward, faster than the cat had a chance to react. I myself fell to my knees, clumsily reaching out for her, but she had no chance. The 2 haggard animals ripped her apart. A flurry of white fur and the red blood stabbed into my eyes and heart. The brief feeling of happiness that I had been snuffed out. One of the coyotes looked up at me, and this time there was no doubt. It was smiling. 2 weeks later, I had my old radio plugged in, listening to sad music. Yes, I have a phone and YouTube, but listening to the radio had always been something Emilia and I had done, going back to high school. I was again nearly asleep when I could hear Madonna's seductive voice over the airwaves. I could again feel a sort of relief, though my cynicism wouldn't allow me to believe that this was actually my wife. It's just the radio. How many Madonna songs are played a day? I closed my eyes tight and turned over. But then suddenly there was a terrible static sound blaring from the radio, and amongst that static, what sounded like screams. Screams the likes of which I have never heard before, born from some place that should not exist. I sat up in bed, glancing at the old unit, but now there was only Madonna singing a Spanish lullaby. I had to have been losing it. Either the liquor or the sadness it was supposed to be killing were finally getting to me. I had to do better for myself, for Emilia. I unplugged the radio, staggered down to the kitchen, and poured out every single bottle of alcohol and can of beer in my kitchen. I had had enough of this shit. Emilia wouldn't have wanted me to live like this, even if I didn't believe she was still out there somewhere waiting for me. I went back to work with a new haircut, shave, and mindset. I was going to get back on track. My boss even complimented me during my shift, as I took phone calls from potential clients. I felt a lot better than I had in recent memory. 2 hours into my shift, I popped open a snack and drank some water to hydrate myself. As I answered my next call, I spat the water out as a low, scratchy voice whispered to me, "Life is terrible, but death is endless, my love." The voice was Emilia's. I fell over backwards in my chair, kicking over my keyboard and unplugging my headphones. I jumped up and looked at my phone, but then the call had ended. There was no record of it when I attempted to do a redial. I've since bought more alcohol, hell, even more than I had before. Whether I'm sitting on my porch, driving home, or even lying in a ball in my bed, I can't help but to notice the inherent cruelty in life seemingly magnified twofold. But I asked for this. I did ask her to send me a sign after all. Okay, so that's a reminder for me to not say that to my fiancé if that ever happens. Holy shit. Okay, so on to the next story. Next story is from Elliot Nas and was posted 17 hours ago. Whew, okay. At 8:12, it stops. I don't exactly know when my neighbor started laughing. That's the strange thing, because I am the sort of person who notices. I notice when the postman is late. I notice when the streetlight flickers. I noticed when the potashniks across the street painted their door a deep green from the prior turquoise. So, not knowing when the laughter started should be impossible. Every night at 8 p.m. sharp, it starts. A low chuckle builds into a howl, and then something more wet and rhythmic. As soon as 8:12 hits, the laughing stops. A week ago I timed it. Exactly 12 minutes. It began exactly at 8. It finished exactly at 8:12. I've never known a process so perfectly executed. It's almost uncanny. It was 7:52 p.m. one night. I stood outside his house. The windows were an unnatural tint of grey, but I could still make out shapes on the other side. The unsettling part was the only shape I could make out was a wooden chair facing a wall. There was nothing else. After 3 minutes, I walked away back to my house with the unwavering sense of eyes digging into me. My voice notes app is now more used than it ever has been. I have a new recording for every day, dated with notes on each experience. I listen back and hear nothing. Sometimes I listen back, I feel like I can hear the laughter again. I think this is my mind playing tricks on me. I find myself leaving things early now. After work, drinks are mere countdowns until I hear that laugh at 8 p.m. Nights out with a date are cut short so I can get home for 8 p.m. I even left my mother early at her Mother's Day dinner so I could get home for 8 p.m. One night the laughter was different. It didn't sound like the manic and childish laughter that usually greets me. It was sad, mournful. I felt almost guilty for listening. The following night they stopped laughing. The usual 12 minutes was cut short, but only momentarily. It was instant, as if a recording put on pause for 10 seconds, and then it resumed, right back from where it stopped. I find myself laughing along now, not aloud, but in my head. I've moved a chair to the closest wall to his house and sit there, following that sweet rhythm in my head. I looked into the mirror and saw myself smiling a few minutes before 8. It scared me. What? Last night it began as usual, the same pattern that I now long for. At 8:08:41 it changed. It sounded hungry. For the remaining 3 minutes it was a raw and visceral outpouring of emotion. Then it stopped on the 12th minute of the hour. Tonight was different. Like clockwork, the sweet melody began at 8. The low chuckle at the beginning, slowly evolving to become louder. But this time I laughed too, not in my head, out loud. It was only a huff, almost involuntary. Silence. The neighbors stopped, immediately, mid-chuckle. I looked at the time. It was 8:06. I waited. Nothing. 8:08. Nothing. 8:10. A knock, not loud, but 12 slow taps. It seemed to come from every direction. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. 8:11. Nothing. 8:12. I laughed. It was the low chuckle which built into a howl and then something more wet and rhythmic. At 8:24, I stopped. Okay, so what? What did I just read? It seems as if the neighbor was laughing from 8 till 8:12, and then he started laughing at 8:12 till 8:24. So then the next person would just then do the 12 minutes after that. Is this some... I mean, what? Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this one, because then I won't sleep tonight. So on to the next one, guys. So I don't really like the mirror stories, because I just find it so creepy, but here it goes. So next one is from Elliot Price. My reflection won't stop watching my baby. And my instincts say not to read this, but I'm going to. It's disturbing how normal things felt. Seconds before my husband and 3-month-old daughter were taken. I had just opened the nursery window and sunlight spilled through the curtains. Dust hung in the air like strands of silk. Birds chirped in the distance. I stood in front of the dresser mirror, watching my baby girl wake up in my arms. She wiggled, then fluttered her eyelids and blinked awake. As her eyes focused up at me, she smiled. I laughed. Good morning, sleepy girl. She studied my lips and her little eyebrows furrowed in concentration Then her mouth twisted and she let out a small coo. I kissed her forehead and her smile brightened. Then I glanced up at the mirror. My reflection didn't. Oh no. Its eyes remained on my baby. My heart skipped a beat. I backed away. When I saw my reflection follow, I forced out a laugh. Sleep deprivation must have been hitting hard. I turned and lowered my baby into her bassinet. But when I turned back to the mirror, my reflection had disappeared. No. And to the right, the door rocked slightly on its hinges. I darted to the door, locked it. Had I gone crazy? Ma'am, I sure hope so. What the frick? No, hell no. I stepped in front of the mirror. Everything else was there. Oak furniture, pink walls, white curtains. Everything but me. I tapped a fingernail against the mirror. It felt solid. I waved my arms around, then stepped to the side to try a different angle. Nothing. I paced to the other side, but no matter where I stood, I was invisible. I glanced back at the door. Could my reflection be... No. I refused to let my mind go there. Reflections don't just crawl out and walk around the house. That's insane. However, here it comes. If I was wrong, if something bad happened and I could have stopped it, but I didn't, I would never forgive myself. I had to get my baby out of this house. I rushed over to the bassinet, lifted out my daughter and held her to my chest. Then I unlocked the door and peeked out. The hall was empty. I stood there, listened. Besides the tick of the downstairs living room clock, the house was quiet. I paced to the end of the hall and glanced down the steps. All clear. I descended. On the wall of the landing there was a mirror, and as we passed I gave it a glance. My baby appeared to float through thin air. My stomach twisted. It wasn't only the nursery mirror that was malfunctioning. I stepped off the landing, peeled open the garage door, stepped out and closed it behind me. Instead of loading her in her car seat, I would drive down the street first, then load her in properly. I opened the driver door and slid in. My baby stirred against my chest and let out a little scream. I know, baby. Shh, shh, shh. I started the engine. Then I reached up to the visor and hit the garage clicker. The garage door hummed open. I pressed my foot on the brake, placed my hand on the gear shift, and something cold and sharp slid across my throat. A knife. Of course it's a knife. Behind me someone said, "Turn it off." A woman's voice. Okay. My daughter kicked and wailed. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my trembling hand off the gear shifter, brought it to the ignition and turned the key. The engine quieted. "Please," I said, "don't hurt my baby." "You need to listen to me," she said, "because I'm only going to say this once. If you don't do every single thing I say, I'm going to cut your throat first, and then I'm going to cut hers. Is that understood?" "Yes." "Okay, put the baby down in the passenger seat." Carefully, I laid her in the seat. She was crying so hard now her face has turned a dark red. "Please, God," I prayed. "Don't let this be the last time I see her." "Now get out of the car," she said. "I'm right behind you." I stepped out, and the knife left my throat for a brief second before sliding right back. Then she said, "Back inside." I paced to the door, opened it, and stepped in. My daughter's sobs echoed inside the garage until the garage door was slammed shut. "All right," she said. "Upstairs." I paused. That must have been where she thought we kept the money. I cleared my throat. "We don't keep our money up there, it's down." "Stop. I know where the money is. I don't want money. Now go." I climbed the stairs one step at a time, feeling a new sense of panic spread through my entire body. Her saying she didn't want our money was deeply disturbing. If she didn't want money, what else could she possibly want? When we reached the top step, she said, "Nursery." I trudged down the hall and entered. Then she shoved me in the front of the dresser, and when she did, I peered into the mirror, but was only one person. Me. I held a knife to the throat of someone invisible. "Okay," this other version of me said. "Go on." "I don't understand." "Get in the mirror." "What?" The other me narrowed her eyes like she was studying me. Then her face seemed to soften. "It's easier than you think. Just climb on the dresser and crawl forward." "What's easy?" "You and I were..." She trailed off, then said, "If you haven't figured it out yet, there's no sense in explaining it now. You should just get it over with. Come on." She pushed on my back and helped me onto the dresser. The surface was so small, my face practically touched the mirror. My breath even fogged the glass, and yet the only visible reflection was the one behind me, holding the knife. "Okay," she said, "go on." I pushed, head first, into the glass, but instead of hitting it, I sank through and tumbled off the other side. I braced for an impact, but it never came. I blinked. I was standing in front of the mirror staring at myself. Then my reflection raised its arm. I raised mine. My reflection waved, so did I. Then it smiled. The muscles in my face twitched upward. I tried relaxing my face to fight against it, but shards of pain singed around my mouth. Then I tried moving my own arms and legs, but an overwhelming pain surged through those muscles which forced me to stop. Panic filled my chest. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't control my own body. Then my reflection opened her mouth, and my own jaw tore open and mouthed along as it said, "You had your turn, now it's mine." It headed for the door. My body copied it on my side of the mirror in perfect symmetry. The split second it left the room, all the tension in my body relaxed. I looked around the nursery freely. It now seemed I could control my body, but still, something felt wrong. I peeked down. I saw nothing but the floor. My body was gone. Several months have passed. This morning, my reflection left her phone in the front of a mirror. I tapped into it to document this hell I'm in. All day, I float around in the world behind the mirror. Everything here is backwards, twisted, warped. I only exist when my reflection steps in front of a reflective surface, and it is only then that I catch glimpses of my real life being lived by this other me. And sadly, even though she's terrible at being me, she has everyone fooled. Well, almost everyone. Whenever my husband gets home from work, he kisses her at the front door like he always has. When our friends come over, they talk and joke and laugh with that thing like it's the same old me. But not my baby. Sometimes my reflection comes into the nursery with her. She cries constantly. She refuses to breastfeed from her. She doesn't even like to be held by her. Somehow, she knows. And when my reflection has had enough and her patience has worn thin, she'll pick up my baby and carry her to the mirror, and only then does she stop crying. She looks up, her eyes wet with tears, and reaches her tiny hand up to touch the glass, and every time it shatters my heart. Because she wants to be with me, and I want nothing more than to be with her. But I can't. I can't speak to her. I can't touch her. I can't hold her. I can only stand behind the mirror and watch. Oh, no! That's a literal nightmare. Oh, no thank you. Hell no. Okay. Leave a like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!